Now to a documentary that is now available on streaming services covering Duplin County, North Carolina, an area that lies along the Black Belt in the American South. Historically, it was the site of slave plantations. Today, it is an area where a growing pork industry has come into conflict with the health and safety of its residents. The documentary is called The Smell of Money, focusing on the community's effort to fight back against what they are calling an environmental injustice. Joining me now are the filmmakers behind it, director, producer, and cinematographer and editor Shawn Bannon, and writer-producer Jamie Berger. Thank you both for joining me. Shawn, please describe what you saw in Duplin County that alarmed you and what inspired the title of this film.
I mean, the close proximity that the residents live to these huge factory farms is alarming. As soon as you're there, they're spraying hog waste right on these people's homes. So that's really, really disturbing. The smell of money, the title is something that, that residents are essentially told, don't worry about the smell. That's the smell of money. So it's one of those things and that's the hog waste they're talking about. So there's hog waste just being sprayed. There's huge lagoons, and that's how the name came about.
Now, you spent 3 years filming in this country, in this community, and the film focuses on a woman named Elsie Herring, who in the spring of 2021 was suddenly diagnosed with pancreatic cancer during the production of this film. She unfortunately passed away in May of that year. For our viewers, take a listen to some of her story.
My grandfather was born and raised on this land. He was a slave, and this land has been in my family for over 100 years. Ammonia, which is really very prevalent. Hydrogen sulfide is released too, and that's a deadly gas. And methane gas is released. I mean, there's gases that are being released, and we have to breathe this stuff in. So this is not good.
Now I want to note that none of the companies that operate in Duplin County have acknowledged Elsie's cancer or her death. Jamie, what have been the biggest takeaways from her activism and her story?
I think Elsie was fighting for fundamental rights that many of us take for granted. She was fighting for basic freedoms that all Americans deserve: the right to breathe clean air, the right to drink clean water, to enjoy her property. This is land that had been in her family since her grandfather purchased it after he was freed from slavery. And so for her, this was not only about getting environmental justice, addressing the pollution in her community, but securing her family's and her community's right to the land that had been in their families for so many generations that was so critical to them. So this was, again, something that Elsie and many other activists fought for 30 plus years now at this time.
And Shawn, just to be clear, I'm assuming you reached out for comment, and Smithfield Foods has never acknowledged Elsie's cancer, nor has any other company with operations in her region. Is that right?
That is correct. And we reached out to them dozens of times. Even we saw them in person one time and tried to get them, to comment, but we didn't get anything. So we got a letter that they send to everybody, essentially.
Now, Jamie, you were born and raised in North Carolina. Can you describe the impact that Elsie's and the community's activism had on the fight against pork factory farming and the injustice it brought to Duplin County?
Well, I think Elsie was an inspiration for so many people who had been struggling against this injustice for so many years. The fact that she persevered despite the fact that her family and her, were constantly harassed and intimidated by this industry, they knew that they were fighting for something that was, something worth believing in, something worth giving your life to. And so I think when she passed away, it was a huge, traumatic experience for the other residents in that area because they lost a spokesperson for this issue. They lost someone who was willing to take personal risks to speak up against this injustice. And I think we all have learned so much from her. And for me, I take away the idea that we have to keep fighting. We can't ever give up, even if we're against huge multinational corporations and these injustices that they have, really drawn on decades of history from. Their inspiration for the injustice that they're inflicting has come from a legacy that these communities have been experiencing for so many years, since the time of slavery.
Shawn, North Carolina's current racial, economic, and political tensions are echoed in this film. And the divides between urban and rural, as well as rich and poor, are evident. Where does the future of Duplin County stand now? And how is the community continuing to grapple with the effects of environmental racism?
I mean, even after they won this lawsuit, unfortunately, the hog industry didn't have to change their practices. So you have hog waste still being sprayed on these communities. The poultry industry has moved into a lot of these communities as well. So factory farming is really thriving, honestly, in these communities still. So the residents are still feeling the impact. So things do need to change. They do need to, make restrictions that, you can't have 26 factory farms within a couple miles of families' homes, which is Renee Miller in our movie. There's just so many factory farms surrounding her and her family, and that needs to change.
Shawn and Jamie, thank